So we're going to start off with point-of-care testing today, and the test we're going to start off with is osmolarity. So I think it's important to really understand the link between tear hyperosmolarity and corneal disease. And really it's tear film composition. As we look at this delicate balance of water and electrolytes, the tear is complex.
Right.
And if you disrupt this balance, it's going to lead to tear film hyperosmolarity.
Yeah, I mean, there's a theme that's going to run through this program a little bit today, which is that the ocular surface is bathed in this just really just protein-rich, anti-inflammatory, immunomodulating, just soup of good stuff. And any disruption of that has such a negative effect on a patient's quality of vision, but also can lead towards health changes.
Yeah.
I mean, the natural tear film, that thing's legit. That is, it's a solid piece of work. It
So
really
intricate,
is. Yeah.
so intricate as we see that.
Yeah.
And what we'll see with the hyperosmolarity is the corneal damage. We get the impaired function, and at that point, things start to break down, but they don't happen immediately. This is a process. That loss of homeostasis is really a process.
Yeah.
And then factors contributing. I mean, that's what's so amazing. The environmental conditions, systemic disease, certain medications. I mean, this is the whole list of things that can cause dry eye.
Right.
You know, it's very extensive, and whether it's reduced aqueous production or increased evaporation.
I think oftentimes it becomes daunting, the fact that we feel like we can't change patients' environment. Like, for example, screen time, okay? Or working or flying on an airplane, or our patients' diets, and so it almost just becomes like there's nothing we can do, but it's almost kind of feel like every little thing you can do to try to help improve the quality of your patient's tear film is, in the end, is going to be incremental and better. So,
with environmental conditions, both of us hear this all the time. Being in Nevada, being in Arizona,
Right.
You say, well, yeah, I didn't have any problems until I moved to Nevada.
Right.
I moved to Arizona, but the fact is, you go to some place like Hawaii, you're going to the Caribbean islands, there's still the same amount. It just precipitating factors. Mm-hmm. And I noticed I was recently in the Caribbean, and my eyes felt better until I got on a light emitting device. As soon as I got on the computer, as soon as I spent any time on the phone, came rushing right back. So again, that's all part of the environment that we're dealing with.
I mean, I think your point is exactly true, is that it's anywhere we are is going to affect our patients. And I actually would take a step back and just say, monitors, tablets, computers, we as optometrists and ocular surface and helping keep the cornea as viable as possible, we have to help our patients stay on those better, and we can only do that by diagnosing and treating things to help do that.
Yeah, and that's really, that can be some really positive incremental change you can make in somebody's life.
Right.
And so I'll ask them, are they still using as much artificial tears? Are they able to work on a computer longer? Are they able to spend more time on a tablet?
Right.
Those are the type of things that really make a difference in somebody's lifestyle as well.
100%. All right, moving on.
Corneal disease is linked to hyperosmolarity. Yeah, dry disease, I mean, it's a direct link. It's in the definition.
Yeah.
It's in the definition, hyperosmolarity, inflammation, corneal neuropathy. I mean, these are diseases that are linked to hyperosmolarity.
When you say to a patient, you have dry eyes, if they don't believe that it feels dry to them, then they're just like, okay. So it's almost like you need to find out what makes your patients tick.
Totally.
It's going to get them to be engaged in managing their vision and managing their eyes. So it's a partnership. And so I think if you just walk in and go, well, you have dry eye, and it's like, like those people that put up their confident, you guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah, drop it down, okay? Take the little hubris away and kind of almost just associate it with what your patients are doing.
Hyperosmolarity-induced inflammation and oxidative stress contribute to the corneal pathology, is what happens in this altered expression of inflammation markers, and that's what we're going to see in some more point-of-care testing, is that exactly. And clinical implications, as we see, diagnostic and prognostic markers. So not only looking at it, but being able to follow that patient as they improve is all.
Yeah, it's a number.
Yeah.
And I back in the day when this first came out, people were like, oh, it's a number generator. And it's like, so is IOP a number generator. It's
So is
what
blood
you,
sugar. So is
right. So everything's unnumber generated, but that number can guide you towards treatment. But the bigger thing is, and I know you're going to say it, Doug, is that you can't have, if you have a number, then you know there's something wrong, right? And
exactly.
and what is it?
The number is that well, it's actually if it's above 300, but we've used 308 as a number that there is then out of balance, that we've lost that homeostatic mechanism at some point.
Right.
And so that's where it's really matters. But typically, you'd say between 300 and over 300, but just cheated a little bit and went up to 308. Right. So, or if there's greater than 8 milliosmol difference between the two eyes. And I think the very important thing, we're going to get to this, is that when you see these numbers and they're generated, you cannot have a false positive. You can have a false negative. So if you have reflex tearing, that can dilute the tears, but you can't have that's the solute concentration, as we talked, of the tears. So you can't have a false positive.
So that patient we saw who was 367, that number is a high osmolarity.
That's 367.
But somebody's like 220 or 240, then you would suspect and retest it, or maybe bring them in on another day. But I mean, what's beautiful about this is that much like IOP, much like blood pressure, much like anything, you can come in and say, you know what, it's gonna fluctuate. You don't get the exact number of a blood pressure every time, but you have a range. And keeping it in that range is a way of kind of managing that therapeutics.
And so many lab tests are exactly like that.
Of course,
we're
they all
looking
are.
at a range,
Yeah.
because, and there's, if you look at your standard lab sheet when it comes out, there's a range. It shows this is normal from this point to this point.
Right.
So
I mean, just like you ask your patients about their A1C, and most of you probably go, what's your A1C? Beachfront Avenue. And then they're like, excuse me? And they give you a number. Well, what does that mean to you? Because like they'll say 6.9 and go, ooh, that's not good. And it's like, well, the doctor wanted me to below 7. Oh, okay. And then you have somebody who comes in at like 8, and they're like, oh, that's good. No, they want me at 5. I mean, it's just, it's that range.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your
range that we're
A1C?
looking at.
Do you know what your A1C is?
I don't.
Neither do I. don't.
In-office osmolarity testing.
So to your same point, Doug, I mean, it's easy to use. I mean, look at Louis. Louis.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. For those of you who have been to any of our programs, you hear Doug tell you to get a Louis, and somebody did. They took his Louis. Louis is no longer in his practice. So.
Louis-less.
Yep. Look at that, 10, beep, poof, 297.
Normal.
Yep.
Turn right over to the other eye.
Yep.
And you see, you're not poking the eye. What you're doing is you're setting that on top of the lid margin. People don't even feel, patients don't even feel when you're gathering this osmolarity.
It's a pipette. I mean, it's just, it kind of, like that saltburn thing. It just takes just a tiny little bit of it.
And, we talked about variability, and I think this is a quintessential point of osmolarity, is that it's going to vary, and you can have a false negative, but you can't have a false negative. And when we look at this at normal subjects, you see the variation with normal subjects? Very, very little. But when we take a look at the dry eye subjects, you have this incredible variability where it goes from normal and goes very, very high.
This one question right here, if you were to say to me, what's one thing you could ask a patient is, ask them if their vision fluctuates. Do you ever notice at times you blink, you see a little better? And every single OD out there, even if you're a first-year optometric student in New England College of Optometry, whose last name is Bloomenstein, and if you screw this up, I will take you down, is that when you're going, which is better, 1 or 2, your patients will blink. And if you're watching them blink, or even the preoperative testing and things that we do, it's hallmark, it's classic, you got dry eye.
Yeah.
They've got it.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
It's
if
like looking in the mirror and seeing no hair and going, you're bald. It's like, I'm not so sure I am. Well, I'm pretty sure you are. Okay. I mean.
And even when your techs are taking visual acuity,
Yeah.
if they have to sit and blink a couple times and now they get a line lower, they have dry eye.
Yep. I mean, yeah, totally.
Yep.
But what I like about the Sandy and things is you can then go back and say, look, you know what, these are the questions that you answered. You can go back and do it again, and it's standardized enough that you can say, look, we're getting some improvement, or at least we haven't gotten worse. I do think that we as clinicians have to kind of step back and say, look, everything's not always going to be, oh my God, I'm so much better. It also could be status quo.
Yep.
I see patients every day and I come in and I'm like, well, nothing's changed. And I go, hey, at our age, status quo, that's where we want to be.
Well, and also it may be that you're able to actually take away medications and keep that. Because I tell a patient, I want you on the least therapy that will stabilize your condition.
I love that. I'm going to steal that.
When we take a look at abnormal osmolarity and how it affects pre-surgical keratometry readings, this was a study done that was by Alice Petropoulos, a surgeon. And she really found that just as the only marker being hyperosmolarity, that you can get variations. I think that that speaks loudly when it was it. So this large variance in K readings is due to hyperosmolarity. So when we take a look at your tear breakup, but look at that last column, and that's the mean K, and see how this varies from 42.9 to 43.9. And that can be just from hyperosmolarity. Yep. So with that, you can see this tremendous difference that we see, when we look at uncorrected vision, the spherical equivalent, that changes.
Yeah.
When we look at, 62% of the time, you can find and hit that mark that you're looking for, 26.8 if you have hyperosmolarity.
Every little bit counts, but that's one slide right here to me, and Alice's study basically really goes to the heart of how we as clinicians help prepare our patients for surgery, for wearing contacts. I mean, you could take this and say this is like wearing a contact. This isn't even just refractive surgery. It's that change in the refractive error, the Ks. It's all over the place.
And look at that when we see the number that hit 20/20 on normal patients at 32.5, 1/3 of that amount hit 20/20 with hyperosmolarity.
Yeah, that's
and the outcome. So it's when we're talking about less than a half a diopter, there's over a double difference between this, a triple difference between 20/20, and when we take a look at B within a diopter, and this I think is the amazing part, within a diopter, normal osmolarity, 0 misses. With hyperosmolarity, 4. Yeah. I mean, so 4 times the amount. So
it's interesting because, back in the day, Doug, when we first started practicing, we were, Kelman phaco emulsification and, small incision cataract surgery and this quest to get great vision, we'd have those patients come out where they were a diopter, 2 diopters off, and, it kind of led probably to the advent of the light adjustable lens, which we have now. But we can also see that a lot of this wasn't just bad biometry, it was osmolarity or corneal surface changes. That's the nature of like radial keratometry. I love my RK patients because their expectations are, they built a crawl space under them and they kept digging because it was like the best week of not wearing glasses forever. But their vision changes because the cornea is constantly changing throughout the day. It's either drying out or the radials are kind of expanding and kind of narrowing. So that fluctuation in their vision is increased by having more dryness, having more osmolarity on the corneal surface.
And this, I mean, during the whole refractive surgery boom, we were talking about 20 happy patients.
Yeah.
Well, when we're looking at 20/20 unhappy patients, it is 7 times more likely in a hyperosmolar patient to have a 20/20 patient that is unhappy. And that's an amazing number.
And this, for the young ODs out there that are just starting, this slide's the most important.
It is.
You could be the freaking best, but if your patient's not happy, your life is miserable. Yeah, 20 happy. Love
20
that.
happy. Yep. When do you use a tear osmolarity? And this is from optometric trends now. When do you use tear osmolarity in diagnosis of ocular surface disease? And 14% said at the initial point of care. Well, that makes sense. It's a point of care test. Only on a case-by-case basis. I don't see any value in incorporating these into my practice. No access to technology. And really, the access is readily there now.
I think this is the trend report that we talked about. And you see that, half of the respondents basically don't have access. To your point, though, Doug, I think we need to do a better job, though, of getting reimbursement, being able to do these and either get paid much like you would in a lab test. But even if you're not, I think that it's important. The access is there. You basically have to figure out how you can make this important enough that your patients understand it's important enough.
And I think that reimbursement is really important, but these point of care tests that I've incorporated in my practice, if I just broke even on them, I would continue to do it because it generates so much downstream revenue.
Yeah,
It
I think
maintains those patients.
Yeah, and to that point though, Doug, and you do practice a little bit in a gilded cage, it's kind of a castle up in Reno. But for most primary care optometrists, we battle a little bit with the vision plan versus medical plan, and I think, but to your point though, is they basically feed each other. If you don't manage the ocular surface, then your vision, the quality of the refraction, the context you put patients in is going to suffer. So for those of you who don't see a value in doing these things, you're basically biting your nose to spite your face, because those are the patients that are come back saying, I just don't think my glasses are right at the prescription. You're doing more remakes, more contact lens fitting. It all starts on that ocular surface.